and let's go ahead and get started.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us for the session this afternoon. I know you're probably feeling a little tired because it's the afternoon. I get a little bit that way toward the end of the day. But I'm so excited to be here with my colleagues, my awesome colleagues from UTSA, to talk a little bit about our collaborative work on working on making our UTSA-created OER more accessible for our students. I am DeeAnn Ivie. I'm the Open Education Coordinator at UTSA, and I am in the division UTSA Libraries and Museums.
Hi everyone, I'm Abena Akesseh. I am a student worker with the UTSA Libraries as a student OER assistant, and I'm a current graduate student getting my master's degree in MSIT.
Yeah, I'm Vanessa Garza. I am a learning experience accessibility specialist in the Office of Academic Innovation at our university. That is a very long title to say I help faculty and staff make content proactively accessible for people with disabilities, really for everybody, because we also do a lot of usability. Okay, so a little bit about UTSA. We are originally a Hispanic-serving institution. That is how we were founded. I actually went to UTSA as a student as well. And when I was a student, we were a commuter school, and meaning that a lot of people were just kind of like, I gotta work full time and I gotta go to school. And while we've shifted a lot to a more research-based university, we still have a large population of students that, as we know, like things like textbooks are just an exorbitant cost for students across the board. We have approximately 35,000 students. We have 1,500 faculty members, 3,600 face-to-face classes, and about 1,000 online or hybrid courses. And with the hybrid courses, online courses, and face-to-face courses, there is typically an element, there is a digital element in almost every single course on campus. So all of those are touched by needing things like OERs and having digital meetings or having assignments that are submitted online. Like the digital component is vast. And just a little bit of knowledge, statistics show that there's about 20% of students register with Student Disability Services or your disability office. However, nearly 70% of students with disabilities do not disclose that they have disabilities. They typically create their own practices and workflows in order to understand content. And so that's an important number to keep in mind when we're thinking about how do we incorporate an amazing tool like OERs, but still meet the needs of all of our students, whether or not they are registered with our disability offices.
Yeah, and those are such great points. And I think our collaborative work that we're going to share with you today we'll get a little bit of a peek into how we're trying to do that at UTSA. There's a lot that I have to share with you about our timeline of OER at UTSA, and there's a lot that I have on this slide, and even kind of going a little bit down further. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a sense of the timeline of our OER work at UTSA, and I'll touch on just some of the things that are bullet pointed, and I'll emphasize more some of the more recent work that we've been doing, because you may have heard about our program or maybe not. So I always like to, touch on as much as needed, and then also talk about, there are some very new, recent, exciting things that are happening with OER that I know that a lot of you may not be aware of. So we love OER at UTSA. And I think one of the things that makes us very, I don't know if we're unique in this way, but we have so many divisions on campus that are excited to support the OER work, like our amazing academic innovation partners, the Division of Student Success. We've partnered with them on some projects as well, our Student Government Association. It really has felt like the last couple of years that we're really gaining momentum with just the growing support that we have at our campus. We joined OpenStax in 2015. In 2016, we awarded 5 grants from the library, and these were to adopt either library resources or OER. We usually have about 30 applications, although the last few years it's been a little bit, the number's been down a bit. And we've also in particular seen a drop with our core curriculum instructors applying to our grants. And those are, unfortunately, those are the faculty we really want to reach with our grants. So, let's see, I'm going to jump down just a little bit. And this timeline is something that where you can kind of see collaboratively as a campus, a lot of our work with OER historically, actually our 2 divisions are the ones that are most involved with the OER work. You're going to see that, in the timeline here, it's mentioning the library a lot and academic innovation because we work together so closely on all of these initiatives. But academic innovation awarded some teaching and learning reimagined grants in 2022. Some of those were integrating OER in their courses, and we talk all the time about how we can best support our faculty doing this work. The 2 bullets I'll talk a little bit more about. We were awarded a grant from the Doers Network in 2020. Is actually should say 2022. I think I have the sorry, I do have it right here. We were awarded in 2022, and we are currently still working on rolling out the action plan for that grant, working with academic innovation and the Division of Student Success. To basically grow OER awareness on campus and to advance from where we already are right now. So there's a lot of exciting things happening this semester. We have currently like a student survey going around textbooks in OER, and we have a lot of responses from students. So I'm sure we'll be sharing out some of that work a little bit later on. And then we did a faculty recognition event earlier this spring for our faculty, also partnering with academic innovation, our provost office, and with our student government leaders. We launched some OER certificate courses, and Vanessa is helping with those as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. We launched those earlier this summer. And the most exciting thing, most recent development is we do have a university task force on OER that's starting up this fall, and that will be co-chaired by our Vice Provost of Academic Innovation, Dr. Melissa Vito, and Dean Hendricks, who's our Vice Provost and University Librarian. So we are really excited to see what will come from that. Just a little bit about our impact with our grant program. So our grant program is funded from the library's budget, but we have had some very generous support from external donors. Scott Suttel and Kathleen Curry have been very supportive of our grant program. So we've been able to do a lot because of those contributions. We have approximately 11 million in savings. Now, to calculate this, that's the next bullet point I have. We take the course enrollment and then we multiply that by $116.94, which is a spark number we use to kind of even out our impact. We also have another number where we actually have the actual textbook cost for the course, because we do actually look that up whenever we're reviewing the applications. And then we multiply that by the number of semesters of the grant. So if it's an adoption grant, it's 4 semesters of adoption, whether that's OER or library resources. If it's a design grant, they have a required implementation of 2 semesters. Although what we have seen with a lot of our courses is they continue to use beyond the grant. And so that's really exciting. We've awarded 137 courses, and we've impacted approximately 89,000 students. And there's a picture here of one of our amazing faculty, Mimi Yu, with our SGA president, Zachary, last year, and Aiden Villarreal, who is our president for this incoming year. And then just a few things I want to touch on a little bit about our grant program, because every grant program at every institution is different. And so this is a little bit of what ours looks like. There's a link out to the grant application page. So if you want to click that link later on when we share the slides out, you can take a look and see how we have it structured. But I'm going to basically break it down on the next bullet points and just talk a little bit out. So we have the 3 grant tiers. There's no cost, which is adoption of library resources. There's no specific licensing applied to that tier of grant. OER adoption, Creative Commons licensing only, and then OER design, creating or remixing existing OER. Sometimes our faculty will, of course, supplement the existing OER, which is the beauty of what you can do with OER. Our award amounts vary depending on whether it's an individual grant or a group grant. So you can see we award a $500 for individual no-cost grants, or $1,000 to $2,000 for group grants. And we base it on ultimately the impact. So the current textbook cost, if it's an expensive textbook, the number of students we're impacting. And we also do look at the drop-fail withdrawal rate for the class, because we really want to try and make sure we're being the best stewards of those funds from the library and from our donors, and putting them to the courses that can really use them the most. OER adoption, you can see our price ranges here, $1,000 for individual, so awarding an individual instructor to adopt in their sections of a course, $1,500 to $3,000 for group, and then OER design is the highest award amount because it involves a lot of work, and our faculty will use UTSA Pressbooks to do that work for the design grants.
So I kind of touched on this before. I'm a learning experience accessibility specialist, and I am part of a small digital accessibility team at UTSA. We do not work in the Office of Student Disability Services. We are actually housed in the Office of Academic Innovation. Our team was created based on right before COVID shut down, which was really convenient because everything went online, and then all of our students with disabilities were like, how do I access this stuff? Because, everyone was just throwing things online and they weren't necessarily accessible. We were born out of a push for universities across the United States to start proactively making their content more accessible. I used to be an instructional designer, and I would help build online courses for faculty. But my passion quickly pivoted to how are we making this content work for every student? And so I became like the sole accessibility person, and then we moved on from there. We also recognized originally we were only working within the content that is in the LMS that we use. We use Canvas, but we quickly realized that this is a much larger job because there are digital components all throughout the university that students are interacting with. And along with that, there are things that they're linking out to, much like, Pressbooks and OpenStax. And so we found that this need for access that DeeAnn's team was pushing, and then our need for accessibility, both aligned with the OER mission to make everything work for everyone as much as possible. And that is kind of how we started to begin the talkings of working together.
Yeah. Thank you so much for touching on. Those are such excellent points. I'm so glad to touch on them. And yeah, I can talk a little bit about the evolution of our partnership. And we really did. I was aware of Vanessa and Raylan, I think, but I remember they presented at a couple of our library meetings. We have all staff meetings. I forget how often they are, every quarter, every couple of months. I think they're every couple of months now. We've changed the timing of those. And then they came to share a little bit of how they can help us. And I was already thinking about, I think we're going to need some help with this because I am not an expert in accessibility, but I want to learn. But I realized that I didn't, I think acknowledging that I could I could try to do this, but it would be better if I, reached out to Vanessa and Raylan and, got some guidance. And so we started the conversation. We had a few initial meetings where it was, sharing a little bit of what was going on with, our grant program and the needs in Pressbooks, and talking through some of the things that I was noticing that where we, may need some assistance. And so the meetings were great. And I think we realized quickly, though, that there was going to be a need for ongoing meetings. And so we still meet. We still meet at least once a month. And sometimes we still have actually two meetings on our calendar every month to touch base. But I'm just so thankful for their partnership and their guidance to support us, because this was I won't say completely new area for me. I have familiarity with it, but Pressbooks is also a very specific environment, and things, they work differently with accessibility in Pressbooks. So, yeah, we've talked about a lot of different things, and specifically about reviewing the content that faculty create in Pressbooks and how we can help them learn about accessibility, and then also how we can teach them kind of in the beginning about how to do this before they even get started with, to have some things to help them with that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about developing our process. So I will open up that page so we can share a little bit of that with you. And I think one of the things that we've had conversations with our OER peers, but in particular with UT Arlington, because they've had their Pressbooks instance a lot longer than we have. And we got our access back in 2020. And I'm really proud to say that we've really seen the network grow, and the number of books grow, and the interest in Pressbooks grow. But it's been a little bit of a slow launch with it. But we wanted to, in our meetings with UTA, we've met with them, I think, I'm trying to remember, 2 or 3 times, and they shared a lot of great things with us, and kind of learning about their processes and the tools that they use. And I think one of the things that there were a lot of great things they shared with us where we were like, oh, that's cool, that we could maybe take that piece of it, but this doesn't work this way at our institution, so maybe we can do that, but maybe we can do it a little bit differently. And so what we did is we did just that. And we've looked at, different things within our own institution of what are some better ways that we feel like this could work for us and we could better support our faculty. So we're going to talk a little bit about that process with you.
So this is kind of where I come into the process. So after we determined there was a need for an accessibility process, an accessibility review process for OERs at our campus, I went through the process of developing a checklist. So to do that, I reviewed the OERs that we currently had available. If you are familiar with WCAG, which are basically the web accessibility guidelines that guide all digital content in U.S. universities and on government websites. It's like our standard, it's our Bible. And so, but it primarily focuses on website accessibility. So what people have to do at universities is take the checklist, the vast checklist that WCAG creates, and then kind of match it up to what they are currently using, and then determine which of these elements do we need to focus on to make our content as accessible as possible. So that's where I come in, because I spend my day doing that stuff. And so I started with a review of the OERs we already had on hand to recognize what were some common accessibility errors that we were seeing in multiple types of content. And then I compared that to what the WCAG asks of us to do for digital content. And then we made a checklist based on that. That checklist is rather long. we do, but it is broken down by element. So if you don't have some of the things on there, it may be because like maybe you don't have tables, so you don't need to look at the table checklist, and things like that.
You want me
So
to
based
pull it
on
up?
that, oh,
Sorry, Vanessa, do you want me to pull it up and show it while
yes,
you're
I was just
okay.
about to say, could you click on the checklist?
Yeah, sure.
So we share as in to be transparent with faculty, we shared our rubric. So this is the overall checklist. It includes multiple elements. So there are things you can do up front to make your content accessible, such as including headings, using the headings and styles tools, creating lists, using the styles tools, very upfront things you can do. If you have images, there are certain rules to follow. If you have images, if you have tables, there are certain rules to follow. We also include in our checklist things that we will recommend to improve accessibility, things that are absolutely required and have to be included. And then we include how we check it. We use two tools called Andy and Wave, which we will show you a little bit later on. Those are both free tools, so anybody can get them. And then, and this gives faculty a way to A, kind of proactively do some of these things, and B, it helps them understand more where we're coming from when they get their reviews back. So from here, we, if you could go back, DeeAnn, to the what is it? The Express page.
Yeah, let me move my bar out of the way there. It's in the way. Okay.
There you go. So then from there, we created an Excel sheet that has all of these rules in it. And then we figured out what would be the best workflow for faculty to request their reviews. And we worked with Abena to teach Abena how to use the accessibility tools to check OERs. So I will say that like a lot of what I do, my philosophy with working with faculty and staff is to be as hands-on as possible and then to slowly fade away. So up front, like Abena and I and DeeAnn and I met multiple times so I could teach them like, these are the accessibility rules. This is how this impacts learners. And these are the suggestions you can give to faculty to improve this content. And then slowly Abena started to do more and more on her own, and DeeAnn started to do more and more. And so now we meet, like DeeAnn said, we meet twice a month, sometimes once a month if we're having a good month. And we go over like some general accessibility things. I'm kind of available all the time for Abena through Teams if she has a quick question about content she's reviewing. So that student worker component is like key in building this review process for your university. You need the rubric, you need the checklist, you need a workflow for faculty to ask for reviews, but you need people to actually be able to spend the time doing their reviews, because some of these books have chapters upon chapters. And so having students that you can hire who can focus on doing this is very crucial to this process. And Abena is going to get into kind of what she does a little bit later on. We did have a question, is this rubric available on our website? It's available in our Pressbooks book. DeeAnn, is that public or is that just within our university?
It is public. In fact, I can pop the link into chat here in just a second. And we actually have the chapters that are relevant to the accessibility pieces that we're presenting today. Those are actually directly linked within our presentation as well. But it's in our, well, let me just pull it up.
Yeah, and I'm not a hoarder in any means. Any work that I do, if it's going to help your university, please use it, revise it, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, and so we have this OER toolkit that this is something that I started working on to help our faculty just overall, and our librarians, instructional designers, everyone who may be working with faculty to integrate OER in their courses. So it talks a lot about a lot of different pieces related to OER work, but we do have a section on accessibility, and we have our checklist, and I'll just paste the link to this whole book in chat, and that way you guys can explore that. And let me see if I can find my toolbar. It keeps going away. There it is. I can see it now. Okay. You guys can explore that. And like I said, we do have the direct pages related to accessibility that we'll touch on linked in here as well. So you can see those. And we've really developed this out this past spring because you know, thanks to Vanessa's amazing work and to, you know, having the funds to get Abena hired to help us out with the reviews, it really was something that it was truly a capacity issue where we wanted to do the work, but you know, I think figuring out, you know, how we were going to do that. And once we got the okay to hire Abena, I knew we were on the right track. And
100%.
yeah.
So two of the tools that we use that we recommend if you are reviewing your OERs for accessibility is the WAVE tool, which is Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. It's a tool created by another university that is one of the like head honchos leads of making accessible content at universities. And I'm not going to get into how to use the tool, but I do want to say that like you simply just put in the link to the page that you want to review. And it will show you, I don't know if you want to do one, I don't know if we have time like that, but you go to the WAVE page and you would simply just put in the Pressbooks link on that web page, and then it will list you all of the errors that it can find. We use two separate tools because Abena will attest to some things are easier to review in WAVE and some things are easier to review in Andy. So by having both tools, she can kind of decide back and forth with like what does she want to utilize. And we did have to go through a mini training of like what like you'll see there's errors on the side, but some of those are like Pressbooks errors, not our errors. And so like we went over like what to look for within the errors to determine if there is a need to point out an issue for faculty. The other tool, so you'll see it like highlights like the headings and everything. It will tell you if your picture has image descriptions in the background code, and it'll show you what that image description is. So it's really useful in like quickly being able to see like overall, these are the issues that are on that page. And then the other tool we use is Andy. Andy is what's called a bookmarklet. So what you do with Andy is there's a pink little button and a finger pointing to Andy, and you just drag that to your bookmarks bar. And then when you are selecting items in Andy, if you see the black box under Meet Andy has like, these are the errors that it finds for focusable elements. That is actually like the least useful component of Andy. There is a drop-down menu under focusable elements, and you can break down how accessible are my images, how accessible are my, what are my headings looking like, what does the structure look like on this page. It can also identify color contrast errors and give you suggestions on better colors to use to improve the accessibility. So all of these components used together help build out what we use to evaluate our Pressbooks pages against that rubric that we created.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I mean, it was so cool learning about these tools, and Vanessa shared so many great tools with us. But I really, I had never used either one of these before, you know, talking with Vanessa about the need for our OER, and it's been great learning about them. I had a little bit, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't done near as many accessibility reviews as Abena does. She does pretty much most of our accessibility reviews. And the one book that I have pulled up, she actually finished reviewing it, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, Abena, this one needs some help. We need to work on, I mean, it needs to be a model for our faculty because it is our toolkit guide, and could you run through some checks? And she did. And so I need to go in and take what she's given me and carve out some time and go ahead and get those things taken care of. But Wave, I found a little bit easier for me kind of as a newbie to this, but they both have really unique things that they do and strengths. And so I know that Abena uses them for, you know, each of them for different things to help her. So it's been so great to learn about them.
And the best part about both of them is that they're free. So
Yeah.
So I mentioned it earlier in our developing a checklist section, but we did develop a process for faculty to know how to submit for accessibility reviews. It's in the toolkit book, and it basically, like, we explain why accessibility is important, how to successfully make your content accessible. There is a Pressbooks called BC Open Textbook Accessibility Toolkit, and it was not created by us. It was created by, I think, British Columbia, and it is an extensive guide on how to make things in Pressbooks accessible. So anything that we don't have like direct information for, we point faculty to that toolkit. And then if you could scroll down a little more, we have our process. So authors will submit their review. We have a form for them to complete. That submission triggers an email to the OER email and our email, the digital accessibility email. And then I don't really do anything with it at that point. And then DeeAnn's team, DeeAnn and Abena, begin the review process. And the turnaround for that is dependent on how long the book is, how many parts are being reviewed, how extensive the errors are. It really depends on what we're working with. During the review, formatting issues are noted for faculty members to fix, and content issues are noted. That review, the Excel sheet that we use for that is shared with faculty when we are done, so that they have an extensive list of the things that are inaccessible. And then once that's complete, DeeAnn shares that with the author, and then the author has 2 months to fix the issues if the book is already published. If it's in progress, they just continue, they go back and fix those issues and then continue working toward making their content accessible moving forward. We usually recommend submitting your reviews early, because if we catch something that you're doing that's inaccessible and we can tell you how to fix it, then moving forward on the next pages, you will be able to like fix it as you go, do it as you go, so that it's not a continuous issue.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, Vanessa.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, are you going to talk about the review part?
Yeah, I would just wanted to briefly show it to you. It's very simple form, and we worked with Vanessa to put these questions together. I think one of the things I wanted to mention is that, you know, we launched Pressbooks, we got our license in 2020, and then I think we started getting use of the platform, but it was very slow it was in 2021, and so we started doing webinars in fall of 2021. So we've had our instance a little while, and because of that, we have a backlog of books. We had a backlog, I should say. Abena has helped so much with us getting caught up and getting on top of the books that had been published. And at that point, you know, it was just like, we'll have to worry about the accessibility piece later, which is not ideal. That's not the way, you know, we wanted to do it. And in fact, I told Vanessa in one of our first meetings, said, you know, I really want to integrate this in from the beginning. And so there is something in their MOU. There's a lot in their MOU. Actually, they have their checklist and it talks about this whole process. But we integrated this year where as they publish a chapter, as they complete a chapter, they have a timeline, right? And so our faculty can submit a review chapter by chapter. And this was a great idea that you know, when in one of our meetings, we thought that would be the best way to go, because it mimics the process that Vanessa and Raylan use on their side as well to help faculty to review, you know, a couple modules, I think, in courses, or you take a piece and look at it and you can usually see their themes, and with that, identify those and share them with the faculty member. And then they know, okay, oh, right, moving forward, then I can just, as I work on my other content, I can be aware of this. And so it's been great. And so now we are at the point where we are doing reviews. Sorry, I'm having trouble stumbling over my words for some reason. Maybe my caffeine is a little high this afternoon, but they are submitting as they complete a chapter in Pressbooks. And so it feels so good to be at that point where we're not backlogged anymore, and we're able to review as the submissions come in. I think there's one other question on the form, and I think it says something like, is there anything that you're concerned about in particular about the content? Are there any areas you'd like for us to address specifically with you, or something like that? So yeah, that's our process.
Mm-hmm. And then for division of work, we split up what we do. So since accessibility is my area of expertise, I work with DeeAnn and Abena to teach them how to make content accessible and how to spot when content isn't accessible, and also how to explain to faculty why that inaccessible component is important to fix. And then when we have like DeeAnn had mentioned, like, we do ask faculty, like, is there something you're concerned about up front that you feel is going to be inaccessible in your book? Those are usually our STEM people. We will meet with faculty. I will meet with faculty, usually with DeeAnn, to go over how can they remediate that content. Sometimes that requires me to understand their workflow and then go back and research, like, what can Pressbooks do, what can't Pressbooks do, where are they getting this content? We have faculty members who will sometimes use OpenStax, and although OpenStax says they're accessible, we have learned they are not. And so then faculty then have to go back and revise the content that they're pulling from other places that is not made accessible. And so I do a lot of that background research for them to help develop a workflow. The other thing that I help with is creating verbiage and content about accessibility for faculty. Now, we definitely have faculty members who came to us and were like, we want to make our content accessible. And I love those faculty members. We all do. But we also have faculty who are like, well, why do I have to do it? And so we included verbiage in their contracts that says why accessibility is essential, how they must contribute to making their content accessible before publishing and before receiving their funds, and what the process is for making that happen. We also accessibility is something that is never perfect. And so we have writing, we have verbiage in the beginning of each book. I believe it's at the beginning, that says, if you're a student and you find something that's inaccessible, please reach out so that it can be remediated. So we have opened the door for students to be able to say when they need something remediated that's in the OER that maybe we missed. We have explained that responsibility level to faculty. And we also have kind of that information kind of floated everywhere so they can see transparency of the whole process. So that's kind of my component of the OER team.
Yeah, and I know I think we've talked a little bit about this already, but I think one of the things I was a little nervous. In fact, when I sent out our first reviews that Abena had completed, because I wasn't quite sure, you know, and it feels silly, but it is an area that, you know, historically I don't have a lot of experience with, and so I wasn't quite sure what the response would be. I am really pleased to say, though, that the reviews that we have shared so far, our faculty, they really appreciate that we're doing this to help them, and they want to make their content accessible. And I think I'm seeing a lot of Vanessa and Raylan's work with our faculty, you know, to teach them about accessibility and the importance, and because it's just, thank you so much. And I think we also try to be, I have tried to be very sensitive to their, you know, I know that our faculty are busy. And so, for example, earlier this summer, I sent out some review requests kind of on the cusp of fall, which I know is not the best time, but I wanted to get it, and it was very, you know, very sensitive in sharing at that time with the faculty. I'm sharing this with you now. You have plenty of time to take care of these if you have questions, but they were just very grateful for our help. So I collaborate with Vanessa, obviously, to work on getting the verbiage ready, getting it in our OER toolkit, and making sure that the verbiage that's in our MOUs is what we want to see with our projects that are awarded grants. And so when the requests come in, we touched on this a little bit, but our OER, UTSA, and digital accessibility emails get the ping. But Vanessa and I worked out, I'll go ahead and take it, and then I assign it to Abena. We use Teams. We have an accessibility team where we, you know, we hold all of our meetings there, and we have like the task by planner in Teams. And so we use that, and it's a great way. If you haven't ever used that tool, I highly recommend it. We use it for so many things here at the library, and I assigned that to do to Abena, and then she'll go ahead and she has like the link to the book and the to-do, and a link to the sheet that I've created. Sometimes I'll ask her, depending on how busy I am, I'm like, oh, Abena, do you mind going ahead and creating the sheet for the book? And she's like, of course. And so she'll go ahead and take care of that. And we have those on SharePoint so that later when we're ready to share them with the faculty, we can just add them to that file on SharePoint and share it with them.
Yeah, so now I'm just gonna like go over a brief overview of like the process I go through when like checking the books, and the how to note it in Excel sheet. So like DeeAnn and Vanessa said, I get the request, and when they come in, I check the books according to the checklist that Vanessa created. And if there's anything that doesn't match on there, I like message her and like ask her like, hey, what do I do about this? How do I go about this? And like we probably like find a solution together, or she's like, oh, hey, I'll check on this later and get back to you. So usually that's how it goes, and it's like pretty smooth, because I'm glad we have Vanessa there, because if not, I don't know how I'd have solved most of these issues, to be honest. But yeah, it's really great having her with us. And yeah, DeeAnn, can you just go to the Excel sheet, please?
Absolutely, yeah. So this, yeah, this is one of our files that we have shared with faculty. I'll let Abena talk about it.
Yeah, so this was for one of the books the faculty sent in. So it had a lot of chapters. It took me like almost a month or more. So pretty much I use Wave and Andy as noted already, and I go through one by one each element separately. And I noticed that, okay, this is not labeled as a heading. So I put in the specific location. I try to be as specific as possible so the faculty can find it easy and like not struggle to understand what I'm trying to point out to them. So I put in a specific location, and the checklist that Vanessa created is already connected to this Excel sheet as a dropdown under the issues column. So I go and look for the specific issue. And once I find that, I just select it and I put in a note for the faculty and just say, hey, this should be a heading, or this should not be a heading. And whether it's required or recommended, according to the checklist, then I put that, and if we didn't correct the issue, we put it as no. So pretty much I do that for like every issue I come across, either using the wave tool or the Andy tool. And once I realize like something is an issue, you kind of see as a recurring theme in the subsequent chapters because they haven't fixed this, so it's like the same thing. So it comes like pretty easy and repetitive to find. So yeah, it keeps moving smoothly, but pretty much just the process I go through for that. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Abena. And I just want to add that it looks like, so this sheet is amazing. As Abena mentioned, it has little drop downs, so we can't see that right now. For some reason, it opened the file as read only. But there's Vanessa created this little drop down, so it's so great because Abena can just type in, or whoever's using the file can type in whatever the issue is, start typing heading or whatever, and then it'll start to match potential issues. And I think on the last, let me see if on this one, because Vanessa has the list of all of the, it may take me a minute. This was a state-funded OER grant book, and it has over 100 chapters. But on the very last tab, I may not get there, but Vanessa has like all of the list of potential issues that are there that align with what's on that checklist that we showed you guys earlier. I won't get there because it's going to take me forever. But it's a great drop down that is there for us to use and for Abena to use. And let's see. Okay, so we're going to touch on a little bit. We've talked about our process, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the things we're hoping to do in the future with our work. And I can talk a little bit about this, Vanessa, and then if you want to jump in, feel free. Some of the issues that we've noticed in Pressbooks that are issues in a lot of our books are related to the way that Pressbooks kind of handles, for example, text boxes. They don't have like a heading assigned to them, which is, well, that was one thing that Vanessa brought to our attention. She was like, this really should be a heading and should kind of default to that. So that's the one thing we see across the board with every review pretty much, is that that's something that needs to be corrected. Vanessa had alluded to some challenges for our STEM authors. We do have quite a few STEM books where we're noticing issues with, and some of the issues are inherited from OpenStax books, from the way that the content is handled in OpenStax. For example, the big thing we've seen is they all have formulas and their images, and then our faculty will just embed the image without putting alt text or an explanation of what the formula is, and that's a huge problem. And then auto numbering of parts and chapters, not so much accessibility, I guess, but usability. Pressbooks doesn't always do that, and we've shared all of these issues with them, and they're aware of them. And so you guys, if you use Pressbooks at your own institutions, you may see some of these things too. Vanessa discovered that Pressbooks, it was actually on their blog, I believe, right, Vanessa, where they mentioned,
Yes.
yeah, this accessibility checker that they were planning on integrating into Pressbooks. And I was so excited when she shared that with me, because I think it will help resolve some of the issues that we're seeing, and then ensure that the books are cleaner when they come to us as far as accessibility. But we've requested to be added to their beta test of that. And so I'm excited to see how that may help our faculty in the future.
Some of the additional projects that we have lined up for this next year, now that we've built this foundation, is having accessibility office hours for faculty so that they can pop in with any accessibility questions they have while they're building their OERs or while they're revising the things that Abena finds. And we can quickly go over how to fix this, or if we need to figure out a workflow for how to fix it, we can do that as well. The other thing that we are doing, I had already mentioned the BC Open Textbook for accessibility. It is extensive and I love it, and it makes sense to me, but that's because I'm an accessibility professional. I don't know if it's the most usable for faculty as they're going along. So our next goal is going to be creating how to proactively create accessible content training modules for faculty, where I can kind of in a video go through, okay, you've started your page. The first thing you do, add a heading, and then do this. If you're going to use text boxes, do this to add the heading. This is how you add images. This is how you work the table. So that way they can kind of pull what they need from each of those accessibility sections on our rubric to ensure that they're making their content accessible.
Yeah. And I think we had talked about, we have so many ideas for things, and I keep remembering too, it came up in one of our meetings about like a sample chapter that's accessible too, and that I keep thinking about that every now and like, oh yeah, we need to do that. But there's just a lot that we've done already, and I'm so proud of all of our work, and I'm super proud of our collaboration with Vanessa, and just to have Abena to help. It's been so wonderful to have all of the support. And so I think what I'd like to share with you all is that you can do this too at your institution. Reach out and find out if you have an accessibility team. Maybe you already know if you do or don't. But if you're not sure, maybe reach out and find out, is there, someone that can help me at my campus with this, and connect with them. And then I think, talk about some of the issues that you're seeing. And I think one of the key things that's also really important is plan a path forward that's going to, also work well for their availability and their bandwidth, because, our accessibility team I know they're very busy. And so we always try to, plan a path that's going to work well. And so we talk about timelines with them and what's going to work best, and just to be flexible about that. And and I think one of the things that I have learned, this has been something for me that I do feel like this really is everyone's responsibility, but learning how to do it is something that is a skill. It's unique. And so connecting with your accessibility folks really is going to be key. I feel like, to best support your initiatives and your programs. You could try to do it on your own, but I know for me, like when I think about that, looking back, how daunting that was. And so I'm just so grateful to have their support with OER and accessibility. I think with that, that's the end of our slides, and I think we have a little bit of time for questions, if anyone has questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate the opportunity to learn more about the Disability Act and dealing in OER. Again, my name is Kimberly Gay. I'm one of the reference instruction librarians here at Prairie View, and I'm also the agriculture librarian. And we do have about 3 to 4 minutes left in this session, because this is one of our last sessions for the day. So if anybody has any questions, really, you can just unmute your mic and share your question. Thank you.
And if you come up with a question later after reviewing our content about accessibility, I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can also find me in the attendees list. I made sure to make my profile for that. If you have any questions about accessibility, digital accessibility, I could talk about it all day, so reach out.
If there's no other questions, I'm going to give everybody back their 3 minutes to conclude our sessions for today. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.